I never believed in monsters. Not the ones you hear about in campfire stories, not the ones whispered about in old family legends. I always thought people exaggerated, twisting shadows and wind into something terrifying just to scare kids like me. But what happened to me out there in the woods changed everything. It's been years since that night, but every time I close my eyes, I hear it again. The sound that didn't belong to any animal I know. And worse than the sound was the thing I saw when I turned my light into the dark. This isn't just another story you can brush off as imagination or nerves. I know what I lived through because I still carry the weight of it every time I step outside after sunset. If you think you're safe in the woods, if you think the silence out there means peace, you're wrong. Sometimes silence means something is watching, waiting. And if you stick with me, I'll tell you exactly how I learned that truth the hard way. It happened in the upper part of Michigan, where the winters are long and the forests seem endless. Out there, the trees are so tall and thick that when the sun begins to set, it feels like night falls twice as fast. By the time the clock touches 4 in the afternoon, the woods are already drowning in shadows. That day I was hunting alone for the very first time. My father and cousin were somewhere else in the area, but my stand was set far from theirs. Close enough that we all thought I'd be safe, but far enough that when the silence grew heavy, it pressed down on me like a weight. The cold was sharp, cutting into my skin even through layers of clothes. My breath came out in thick clouds, and every small sound, the wind shifting, a branch snapping, echoed louder than it should have in that frozen quiet. The trail I had taken in was narrow, carved into the snow and leaves. Behind me was only miles of forest. Ahead of me, somewhere in the distance, was the safety of camp. Out there, it felt like I was the only person in the world. Or at least, that's what I wanted to believe. At first, everything seemed normal. I sat in the blind, waiting, listening, convincing myself that the creaks and groans of the forest were just the usual sounds of nature. A squirrel darting through the leaves, maybe a bird shifting in the trees above me. But then I heard it, the crunch of something heavy moving across the forest floor. Too slow, too deliberate to be a deer. I froze, holding my breath, listening. The sound stopped as soon as I noticed it. For a long moment there was only silence, not even the whisper of wind in the branches, just that suffocating stillness pressing against my ears. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself I was imagining things. Still, I couldn't shake the way the hair on the back of my neck stood up, like my body knew something I didn't. When I finally stepped outside the blind, the first thing I noticed was a trail of disturbed leaves cutting straight through the snow. Wide, heavy, not made by a rabbit or a fox, not even a deer, something bigger. And that was the moment my stomach sank, because whatever had walked through there, it wasn't trying to hide. I started walking faster, my boots crunching against the frozen ground. Each step echoed too loudly, like the forest was holding its breath, listening to me. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see nothing but shadows, half terrified I might see something else. That's when it came. The sound was like nothing I'd ever heard before. A deep, broken howl twisted into something almost human, like an animal screaming in pain. It tore through the trees, rattling inside my chest and stopping me dead in my tracks. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. Then, from behind me, maybe 100 yards back, the sound came again, louder this time, closer. I broke into a run. My pack slammed against my shoulders and my rifle bounced against my back, but I didn't care. All I wanted was distance, as much as I could put between me and that noise. And then I saw it. In the pale light of the moon between the trees stood a figure. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a wolf. It was tall, too tall. Thin, like its arms and legs had been stretched too far, its head tilting unnaturally to one side, as if its neck couldn't hold the weight. It didn't move. It just stood there half hidden in the shadows, as if waiting for me to notice it. And when I did, it felt like it had been smiling the whole time. The moment my eyes locked on that figure, something inside me snapped. I tore the rifle from my back and clutched it tight, though I knew deep down it wouldn't matter. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't afraid of me. I turned and ran. Branches clawed at my jacket. Snow crunched beneath my boots, and my lungs burned as I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. Behind me, the forest came alive with the sound of pursuit, snapping branches, heavy steps, and that guttural cry that made my stomach twist. I wasn't alone out there. Through the trees, I suddenly spotted a light, a faint beam flickering in the distance. It was my cousin. He must have been making his way back toward camp. Relief surged through me, and I screamed his name. He turned, lifting his headlamp toward me. But before he could answer, the sound came again, louder, closer, and the figure rushed through the darkness between us. I watched his face twist in confusion, then terror, as he realized something was there with us. And then, he was gone. One moment he was standing in the beam of his own light. The next, the shadows swallowed him whole. His scream tore through the trees, cut short so suddenly it made my heart stop. I wanted to go back. I wanted to help him. But survival took over. I kept running, choking back sobs because I knew if I stopped, I'd vanish just like he did. And I couldn't let that thing take both of us. By the time I realized where my legs had carried me, I was crashing through brush onto the narrow road that connected our camp to the highway. My body was trembling, lungs on fire, but I didn't dare slow down. The world behind me felt alive, like every shadow was chasing me, every tree leaning in to watch me fail. I risked one glance over my shoulder. It was there, under the moonlight, standing in the middle of the road, its arms hung too low, its body stretched thin like it had been pulled apart by invisible hands. Its head tilted again, unnaturally, as if bones were bending where they shouldn't. And though its face was nothing but shadow, I swear I felt its eyes burn into mine. I stumbled, almost falling to my knees. The weight of panic pressed me down, my chest heaving so violently I thought I might black out. But then it stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. I fumbled with the rifle, raising it with shaking hands. My finger hovered on the trigger. But deep inside, I knew that bullets wouldn't matter. It wasn't moving like an animal. It wasn't bound by the same rules as the living. So I did the only thing left. I screamed, a raw, broken cry that echoed down the empty road. And for the first time, the figure stopped. It just stood there, frozen under the moonlight, while I staggered backward toward camp. My scream still hung in the night air, but its silence was worse than the chase itself. I finally reached the cabin, collapsing onto the porch steps. My body shook uncontrollably, tears running down my face. I couldn't catch my breath, couldn't stop the sobs that had been building since that first horrifying sound. My father's truck engine hummed in the driveway, and when he stepped out, I ran to him, throwing myself into his arms. Between gasps and shivers, I told him everything. The figure, the sounds, the way my cousin had vanished. At first, he didn't believe me. He thought it was fear or exhaustion talking. But when he saw the desperation in my eyes, the raw panic that refused to fade, his face changed. He knew something had followed me out there. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep for nights after. The forest that once felt familiar now seemed endless, filled with shadows that might be waiting just out of sight. Friends and family said it could have been a bear, or maybe my imagination playing tricks. But I know what I saw. Even now, years later, I never go into the woods alone. I carry something bigger than a rifle, not just for protection, but for the reassurance that if it comes back, I won't be entirely helpless. And sometimes when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear it again, waiting, watching, and reminding me that some things in the forest aren't meant to be seen or escaped.